the MMA fortune teller.
The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller.
UFC Fight Night 169 taking place in Norfolk, Virginia, taking place this Saturday. Decent card, decent main event, nothing too spicy, but we'll be getting into all that here in a minute. But more excitingly, we got to talk about what happened this past weekend. We had a major heavyweight title boxing fight that took place. I called it. I called Tyson Fury. For those of you guys that follow me on Instagram, you saw the video I put out. But more importantly, it was another profitable weekend for the teller. Hit that Dan Hooker play, 5.5 units to take the victory for the weekend. I made it simple, didn't put too many bets out there this weekend. I was also on Jimmy Crute. I hesitated with the Jimmy Crute play, and hey, it's all good. You know, I still went 1 for 1. Should have been 2 for 2. But sometimes you got to do that. You know, sometimes you don't want to push too many bets on one card. Sometimes you get a little bit overzealous and it can end up biting you in the butt. I did see some signs from Jimmy Crute that led me to just hold back on him a little bit until I saw that he made some corrections and some of the mistakes I saw him making in some of his past fights. And he looked good. So I should have been 2 for 2, but nevertheless, I was 1 for 1. Dan Hooker easily won that bout. I don't know what everybody's talking about how the fight was close or it should have went to Paul Felder. You know, I don't have a lot of tolerance for stuff like that. I think it's ridiculous. You know, if you guys don't know what you're watching, you know, go down, break it down round by round. That's how the judging system works. That's how you win a fight. If you don't get the knockout or the submission, it goes by a round-by-round status. Okay, Dan Hooker easily won the first round. There's no questions about that. If you don't think Dan Hooker won the first round, you don't know what you're watching. The third round, Dan Hooker easily won the third round. If you don't believe he won the third round, you have no clue what you're watching. The fifth round, yes, it was a little bit closer, but he easily won that round. I mean, he literally was on top for the last minute and a half of the fight. He had temporary mount. You know, he was out grappling him, he was controlling him, and even before the takedown, he was out striking Paul Felder. He was walking forward. He started to take over the fight again in the fifth round, even before getting the takedown. How can you give Paul Felder the fifth round when he was on his back, getting mounted and outstruck and everything, getting jabbed in the beginning of the round? How do you give him that fifth round? In regards to the second round, it was extremely close. It was extremely close. It could have gone either way. I still felt that Hooker won that round as well. You know, he didn't really do much damage, but he had Paul Felder's back for about a minute and a half as well in the middle of the cage. Of course, he didn't do anything with it, so it could have gone either way. The fourth round, Paul Felder dominated. And I think a lot of people are short-sighted. They see that fourth round, they think that he was dominating the whole fight, and he really wasn't. He did connect with in my opinion, Paul Felder did connect with the more significant shots, the more powerful strikes. But on a round-by-round status, Dan Hooker easily won the fight. You know, I'll be more conservative with it. I'll say, you know, he easily won 48-47. He easily won the 3 rounds. Could have been 4 rounds. But anyone else that says something different, you guys don't know what you're talking about, and I'm going to be blatant with you guys. The same way I'll talk about the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fight the first time around. Anyone that doesn't think that Tyson Fury won every single round, besides maybe the 2 rounds he got dropped in, and really, in my opinion, he still came back, got up, and he still won those rounds. So the fact that was a draw, it's completely corrupt. There's a major issue with judging in boxing and also in MMA, and I don't have any tolerance for it. I've actually been contemplating different ideas of things that I could even try to do in the near future to try to push for a movement to get that stuff changed. I've thought about going into judging myself. We need people that actually comprehend what they're watching, that are not just getting emotional because they wanted to see one guy win or whatnot. I mean, you got to be realistic about what you're watching here, so... But we'll save more of that for another day. The main focal point is it was another profitable event for the teller. I'm on a 4-fight win streak right now, or a 4-bet win streak. And I feel very, very confident in the one play I already have locked in for this upcoming weekend. So it will be another profitable event after this upcoming Saturday surpasses us. I feel extremely confident about it. I'm looking into one other play as we speak as well. For those of you guys that haven't already, hit me up, DM me. join the team. I'm telling you guys, a lot of people have been signing up recently, and they've been very happy that they made the decision to do so. We've been hitting bet after bet, as I said, and it's going to continue. I've really been putting a lot of time into the fight tape, and it's been paying off. So other than that, before we get into UFC Fight Night 169, we got to touch upon Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. You guys heard it from me on my Instagram. I was extremely confident in Tyson Fury to win the fight. I said it the first time around. He was disrespected the first time they threw down. He dominated that fight. He got caught slipping twice. I mean, the first knockdown was a completely overrated knockdown. He was almost off balance. It was a little pitter-patter knockdown. The second knockdown that Wilder hit him with was disgusting. It was a beautiful knockdown. But Tyson Fury got up. And I felt that should have been more of the focal point, and that should have been more of the narrative. Because other than that, he got up and he dominated every round, and I knew that it would carry over. And I really felt confident that he would avoid that big shot after already being in there with him, knowing what to watch out for. And that's exactly what happened. So the teller did have a major play on Tyson Fury. So, I mean, this past weekend was an extremely pleasant weekend for me. Dan Hooker came through. Tyson Fury came through. Cashed a bunch of money. And, other than that, as I said, definitely reach out to me if you guys are looking to join the team. Also, please subscribe to the channel. Help me push this channel out there, get into more people's ears. Let's grow this thing. Follow me on Instagram, MMA Fortune Teller _ And what else can we say? Other than that, I guess we'll get ready to get into UFC Fight Night 169, Norfolk, Virginia, taking place this Saturday. Let's get it. So the first fight of the card, we got Ismail Naurdiev taking on Sean Brady. Of course, Ismail, since he's made his UFC debut, he made a name for himself. I believe he took the fight on short notice against Michel Prazeres. Prazeres is a guy that doesn't lose quite often. Of course, the little tractor guy is a beast. And Ismail came in and made a name for himself, and he had a lot of hype after that fight. Of course, in his next match after that, he took on Chance Reencounter and had a major setback. Looked to have gassed out a little bit too much in that fight. Showed a little bit of a hole in his game. He seems like he might be one of those guys that's a front runner, and if he starts to get into a dog fight, he looks like he might be the type of guy that can gas out at times. However, in his last fight against CR Badahazara, he looked pretty good in that fight, did pull off the unanimous decision. So maybe, he did work on things a little bit, and he's cleaning up his game. Again, he's only 23 years old. This is an extremely young fighter that has a lot of promise. His striking's flashy. It's very skilled, and he's definitely going to give some guys trouble in the division. Definitely the sky's the limit with this guy if he puts it all together. We'll have to see how that all works out for him. And then you got Sean Brady. Sean Brady is undefeated at the moment. This is a guy that a lot of people were high on as well, making his UFC debut. The line was extremely high on him against Court McGee. And, Court McGee, a crafty veteran who has good cardio. Sean Brady didn't really perform the way that the line looked on that fight. I believe he was like a -300-400 or whatnot coming in, into your UFC debut. He didn't really look like that to me. That fight ended up playing out very close. I did have Brady winning the fight, but I heard a couple mixed reviews on how they saw that fight going. Some people thought Court McGee kept it really close. It could have gone either way. But I did have Brady win the fight. Brady did look to be a little bit tired in the later rounds as well. So, both of these guys kind of have that in common, or they've had that in common in certain parts in their fight game. Of course, certain fighters can clean that up, and there could have been a lot of reasons and factors that have caused that for a specific fight. So we don't want to necessarily just label them as those types of fighters at this point. So, who are we going to pick in this fight? I think it's an extremely close fight. I'm leaning Ismail right now. Just from what I saw from Sean Brady in his debut, the fact that Court McGee was able to keep it close. I'm not the biggest fan of Court McGee at this time, at this stage of his career. His striking's not the best. He's kind of, I get it, he's a grinder, he has good cardio, he's extremely tough. But Court McGee striking, you should be able to work him and just, make that an easy victory, in my opinion, if you're really a high caliber type of fighter. I'm going to take Ismail. I think that his striking is very good. He's young. I think he's going to take leaps and bounds every time he steps in there. You guys hear me say that a lot, and we see that happen. I'm telling you, if you really pay attention to the younger fighters that have a lot of potential, a lot of times they make leaps and bounds in their games. And now Ismail will be a little bit more comfortable in the octagon, and I could see him edging this fight. So I'm gonna pick him to win the fight. We got two guys making their UFC debuts in this next bout. We got Aalon Cruz taking on Spike Carlyle. Aalon Cruz, of course, had the very impressive showing on Dana White's Contender Series not too long ago. For those of you guys that remember that nasty knockout finish, Aalon Cruz is rangy for the weight class. He has some potential. And then we got the newcomer also, Spike Carlyle, who seems to be pretty well-rounded. If you look at him on tape, a lot of submission victories, spinning back fist finishes and whatnot. He seems to be very well-rounded. Does have a very questionable loss on his record, though. Does have a loss not too long ago to a guy that has an under 500 record, a guy that has more losses than victories. I didn't really like the way that looked. But on tape, he looks decent. I see why he's getting the call up to the big show. But as far as I'm concerned, Aalon Cruz looks to be way more impressive on tape. He already has a nice victory on Dana White's Contender Series, as I talked about. So maybe a little bit more ready for the big show. But I really just like his frame for the class, for the weight class, being 6 foot, having a 78-inch reach. I think he could definitely use that to his advantage in this fight. If he uses a good fighter IQ and plays his cards right here, I see no reason why he shouldn't pull this victory off. So I definitely got Aalon Cruz to win this fight. So as I was saying, we got plenty of fighters coming off the Dana White's Contender Series show. We got two guys here, both coming off the show, matched up. TJ Brown taking on Jordan Griffin. Jordan Griffin, for those of you guys that don't know about him, he's been around the game for a while. A very pleasant fighter, a true gentleman, a very nice guy. I've spoken with him before, and I really hope he gets a victory here. He definitely needs it. He's coming off 2 losses, and if he were to lose this fight, it wouldn't be a good look. 3 losses in a row, and I don't really think that's a good example of the fighter he is, because he is a truly good fighter. He's well-rounded, and he has a lot of skills. And I think that this is a guy that, he's deserving of being inside the octagon and pulling off victories here and there. May not necessarily be a guy that makes a run for the belt, but this is a guy that's, he's going to bring the action every time he steps in. He's going to get finishes, and I really want to see him get a victory here. And I think this is the perfect opponent for him in TJ Brown. TJ Brown's going to bring the fight. We saw what he was about, on his Dana White's Contender Series bout. He's all about, like I said, bringing the fight. He's going to walk forward, and he'll eat shots too. So Griffin will have a chance to pull off the knockout if that's what he wants to do. TJ Brown's going to look to exchange. And, and even in the fight that he won on Dana White's Contender Series, it was a little shaky for him. The fight did not start off good for him whatsoever. He ended up pulling off the victory in the 3rd round with the arm triangle choke, but it was not looking good for him. For those of you guys that don't remember, run the tape back. He had a very slow start in that fight. Jordan Griffin, coming off a tough loss, to a crafty fighter in Chaz Skelly. Chaz Skelly is, in my opinion, a very underrated fighter. And then before that, he lost to Dan Ige. Dan Ige is a very impressive fighter, in my opinion, and one of the more underrated fighters at the time. So maybe don't look too much into that. This is really going to be where we're going to see what Jordan Griffin's made out of. Training over at Rufus Sport, a solid gym. You saw what Duke Rufus has been about for a long time. You saw him over there in you saw him over there in New Zealand this past weekend with Paul Felder. We talked about that a little bit, but it is truly an excellent camp, and Jordan Griffin's been around there for a long time. So I expect Jordan Griffin to bring the fight, and I think he pulls off a decision. I would love for him to maybe tag TJ and end up getting a TKO, or maybe tag him, drop him, and get the submission. But I more so see the decision. TJ Brown is a tough customer and a very hard guy to put away. So, we'll take Jordan Griffin to win by decision. According to the line, we got an evenly matched fight here in Sergey Spivak taking on Marcin Tybura. Sergey Spivak is a guy that made his UFC debut against Walt Harris. Sergey was undefeated at the time. People really didn't know what to think about him. And Walt Harris made it an early night for him that night. Walt finished him in the first round. Shout out to Walt Harris too, man. Everything that he's been through, and he is making his return to the octagon in the near future, which is a great thing to see. And a real tragic situation that he had to deal with, and I only wish the best for that guy right there. But yeah, man. So Walt Harris made quick work of Sergey Spivak in his debut. But since then, Sergey bounced back with an impressive performance against Tai Tuivasa, where he showed that, he's not just about knocking dudes out. He's a well-rounded fighter. He was able to pull off the arm triangle choke, and he showed he has a little bit of jiu-jitsu to go along with his power. So I think we're truly going to see what kind of fighter he really is in a fight here, against Marcin Tybura. I think we'll get a good grasp of what kind of fighter he is. He definitely needs to pull this victory off. Marcin Tybura is a guy that has only won one of his last 5 fights, and I'll be honest, I'm just not that high on him. I think a lot of people fell into him in the beginning. He had a decent record. It was a little bit padded. People were impressed for the fact that he's a decent striker. He's a big dude that can get the leg up there, throw head kicks and whatnot. People like that type of stuff. But when it's all said and done, I just don't feel like he really has that X factor, that edge. I've seen him fade in fights. I've seen him up on the scorecards and then get knocked out before. He's coming off a nasty knockout against Augusto Sakai. Sakai carries power, but that's a guy, if you have decent, head movement and you have, good defensive skills, you should not be getting knocked out by Augusto Sakai. He's slow, but he is powerful. Got finished by Shamil before that. Of course, he did pull off a victory against Stefan Struve. Stefan Struve is, he's a hit or miss type of fighter these days. He's a little fragile, so. And then, of course, Derek Lewis, Fabricio Verdum made work of him. Excuse me, guys. Just getting over this cold that I had the last couple of days, so finally getting rid of it, but still got a little bit of a cough. Yeah, but the point I was making, man, I'm not a big fan of Tybura, and I could see Tybura striking, giving him a chance in this fight. He might be a little bit more nimble on the feet and whatnot. Sergey Spivak, he has shown to be a little slow from what I've seen from him, but I'm going to go with Sergey Spivak. I think that he might have a little bit more of that X factor in regards to that fighting spirit, maybe some wrestling abilities and whatnot, and maybe he'll use his grappling a little bit. So I think Sergey Spivak will get it done, the polar bear here. So we got a very solid matchup here. One of the more highly anticipated fights in the card, in my opinion. We got Brendan Allen taking on Tom Breese. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know if you want to look at these guys as if they're prospects at this point in the game, at least in regards to Tom Breese, because I know he's been around for a little bit now, but he really hasn't, entered that the top of the division. He hasn't been taking on, top-notch fighters. So in a way, he kind of is still a prospect, I guess you can say. And I have both of these guys, right around 4-star prospects. I think these guys have a world full of potential. These are guys that you can see potentially fighting for a belt. I'm not saying that they are going to be fighting for a belt, but these are the guys that have potential, to elevate their game to that level. So, that's always exciting to see two guys like this get locked in the cage together at this point in their careers. Tom Breese has a crazy frame for the weight class. In the middleweight division, being 6'3" with a nice reach advantage on him as well. And then you got Brendan Allen, who's just a very skilled fighter. He's only 24 years old. He truly is a prospect. We've seen him make his way from the Dana White's Contender show as well. And since, fighting inside the octagon, in the UFC, he's just been nothing but spectacular. You saw him in his last fight against a fighter who I believe is very skilled in Kevin Holland. He went out there and completely outclassed him. And I had Aalon to win that fight in the underdog spot. I chose him to win that fight. I knew his grappling was the real deal, and he pulled off the rear naked choke against a very skilled Kevin Holland. Brendan Allen training over at Rufus Sport, part of an excellent program over there. And this was a hard one for me to pick because these are two guys that I like to watch, that I watch, I take notes on, and I wait for them to get in the right matchups to collect money on them against other opponents. But then you got both of them locking in the cage together. So this is a tough one for me. I'm going to slightly edge Tom Breese just because I feel like he has some crazy X factors with his frame, his body. He's so big for the weight class. His striking is nasty as well. I've seen Brendan Allen take some shots on the feet, specifically in his Dana White's Contender Series debut, where he ate a lot of shots in the beginning of that fight before finally prevailing with the victory. So he is open to be tagged. So the way I see this playing out is if Brendan Allen's going to win this fight, he will have to close the distance. He'll have to make this more of a grappling match or more of a inside type of boxing, dirty boxing, push Tom Breese up against the cage, get in the inside, throw some uppercuts, hooks, make it a nasty dogfight. If he chooses to sit on the outside and just strike with Tom Breese, I think Tom Breese is going to use his range, and I think he's going to connect quite a bit. So it really depends how we see this fight going. Which direction that'll edge one fighter more to win. But I see Tom Breese's route a little bit more likely. If Tom Breese has been working on his takedown defense and he's able to keep this fight on the feet, which I think he may be able to, I think it edges him, pretty strongly. But then again, I spoke highly of Brendan Allen for a reason. This guy knows how to get the job done. He may be able to get Breeze down to the mat, and then I believe it's his world from there. May even be able to pull off the submission, maybe another rear naked choke or something else. Who knows? Because he is very skilled on the mat, and he has that X factor, man. When he goes in there, he's expecting to win. He knows he's the favorite in his mind. Doesn't matter what the odds say. In his mind, he's the favorite against anybody inside the octagon, and you got to admire a fighter like that. So a very dangerous fight, but I'm going to slightly edge Tom Breese. Either one of these fighters can win this fight, I'm telling you guys. We got Gabriel Silva taking on Phillips. Of course, Gabriel Silva did make his UFC debut not too long ago against Ray Borg, and definitely tasted defeat in that fight. But Ray Borg is a savage, so now we're going to see how he does, matched against an opponent that may be a little bit on a lower tier than a Ray Borg. That in Phillips. Phillips training out of the MMA lab. This guy is a skilled fighter, has good jiu-jitsu. Of course, he was on the Ultimate Fighter show where he lost to Brad Katona quite early in the show. Did taste defeat also to Victor Henry in the regional scene, and then since then has bounced back with the victory against Emeka Akikondu, where he did get the finish. He head kicked him and he followed up with some nasty punches. And yes, of course, he did have a victory also on Dana White's Contender Series back in 2017, which was some time ago. And he looked impressive on the show as well. Finished the fight with some ground and pound early in the first round. So Phillips has shown signs to be a very capable fighter. Gabriel Silva training out of Team Nogueira. Those guys are nasty with their jiu-jitsu and their striking. Their striking's underrated over there as well. So, Gabriel Silva will be a little bit smaller. Although his reach is actually longer, he'll be the smaller fighter. I believe his frame will be a little smaller, and you'll see that at the weigh-ins. I've really been back and forth on this fight. I've been watching the tape. I'm trying to see if one fighter stands out to me more than the other, and it's been tough to pick a fighter here. I'm going to go with Gabriel Silva, but this fight's extremely close. I could easily see Phillips pulling off the victory here. He's young. He's starting to put it together, and it wouldn't surprise me in the very least bit if he pulls off the victory. We got Violent Bob Ross, Luis Pena taking on Steve Garcia Jr. And it's pretty funny. I just saw Luis Pena, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. Saw him over here in Fort Lauderdale at the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship event that took place. Hector Lombard was in the main event over there. And I saw Luis Pena. I think he was ordering a diet soda or whatnot, just walking around by himself. And I was going to say what's up to him, but was kind of caught up with whatever else I had going on at the moment. Thought I'd see him a little bit later, never saw him again. But on a positive note, if you got some money on him, I could tell you he wasn't drinking alcohol, at least from what I saw. So, that was a good thing. I believe he's putting some time down here at one of the camps over here in South Florida. That's the only reason why I could have saw or I could think that he would be down here. I know he was training at AKA for quite some time. And, Luis Pena is a guy that a lot of people have been high on ever since The Ultimate Fighter. He's extremely confident on the show. Everyone that he was faced against, he thought he was just going to go out there and outclass them. He had a little bit of a rude awakening once he, started to make his real UFC debut inside the octagon. Mike Trezano was able to defeat him. And then again, he just lost his last fight against Matt Frivola. I saw that fight live. I thought he probably did enough to pull off the victory. I think he was a little bit robbed in that fight, but he let the fight play out too close, and Matt Frivola had all of his people out there. The entire crowd was rooting for him, and they really swayed the judge's decision in that fight. But if you take a look at the 2 losses that are on his resume, both split decision losses, so he could be an undefeated fighter, still to this day. Till this day, like what's his name, Deontay Wilder said. But he's not. He lost those 2 fights. He did look impressive against Matt Wyman with the ground and pound. And here's the thing. We know how Luis Pena likes to fight. He likes to use his range. He has a nice 1-2, good footwork. The wrestling is maybe underrated, or maybe people do give him credit for his wrestling, because his wrestling is not bad whatsoever. Definitely has some wrestling accolades. And now, he's taking on Steve Garcia Jr. This guy's Steve Garcia Jr., tough customer. And, he's going to have his hands filled with Luis Pena, so we'll see what he's really about. He's been handling stuff too, just coming off a solid victory on the LFA fight scene over there, where he finished the fight in the second round. Handled business on the Contender Series fight that he was on against Desmond Torres, finished that fight in the first round. He took a loss against Aalon Cruz. We touched upon him a little bit earlier. Aalon Cruz is a very skilled fighter. He lost to Joe Warren inside the Bellator cage. Joe Warren is a very crafty wrestler. I remember seeing that fight some time ago, and Joe Warren just used his grappling to really control Steve and just outclass him in the fight. He was just a more experienced fighter. So, if you look at his losses, they're to notable guys. Ricky, I forget how you say his last name, but Ricky Turcios. I've seen him fight as well, and that's a guy that's not a bad fighter, and that was a split decision loss. So all of Steve's losses are against notable opponents. All of his victories have been impressive. A lot of finishes, a lot of knockout finishes. He's a dangerous fighter. I think this is an excellent matchup here. I'm trying to think, man, who I'm going to pick, because I've been a little bit back and forth on this. I really do think that Steve Garcia has a chance to get the knockout or to land the more devastating blows, and it's going to look better on the judges' scorecards. But Luis Pena, he's fluid with his movement, and he's a crafty fighter. I'm going to go with Luis Pena. I think I have to go with Luis Pena in this fight. Since the beginning, he's been putting in time at solid fight camps. He's willing to do whatever it takes to raise the level of his fight game. So I'll go with Luis Pena to pull the fight off. So we talked a little bit earlier about some top prospects on this card, and we got another one here in Grant Dawson. But he's quickly going to get out of that top prospect category, because this guy's been getting locked in the octagon quite a bit as of recently. He's closing in on that veteran status. But in all seriousness, Grant Dawson, this is a guy I have rated as a 4-star prospect. I love his wrestling. I love his tenacity. Ever since I saw him fight for the first time on Dana White's Contender Series, I was extremely impressed with his wrestling abilities. And it's not even just his wrestling abilities. He has an X factor where he'll just continuously chain takedown after takedown. He will never give up on the takedown, and I really love to watch fighters that fight like that. It's almost like a Khabib type of style. Obviously not on the same type of level, but you like to see a fighter trying to implement things in his game similar to like a Khabib, and Grant Dawson really is that. I mean, if you stuff the first 4 or 5 takedowns, it doesn't matter. He's going to keep coming, and he's going to get a takedown eventually. We saw it ever since his debut on Dana White's Contender Series, where he went out there against Adrian Diaz, and he got the rear naked choke in the second round. And that choke really just stemmed from continuous takedown attempts, just completely wearing Adrian Diaz out. You could just see it in Diaz's face. He never fought an opponent with the abilities of a Grant Dawson, and he was quite in shock in there. Since then, he had a nice victory against Julian Erosa. That was another fight where he literally just never stopped with the takedown. He just went takedown after takedown after takedown attempt, and he got a lot of them too. And even if Julian Erosa was able to get back to his feet, back to the mat he went, after that. So that was a very impressive performance. And then, of course, he just got a victory against Mike Trezano. I am very high on Mike Trezano. I feel that Mike Trezano has a lot of potential inside the octagon. He's a skilled fighter. He's young. Give him another 2-3 years. You'll see him having some solid victories inside the octagon. And now you got Grant Dawson taking on Darrick Minor. Darrick Minor is a guy, just a well-rounded fighter that's been around the block for some time. I remember watching him fight, years ago, just on, small-time promotions, LFA and whatnot. Had a lot of fights in LFA, RFA as well. And, he had his chance against Herbert Burns on the Contender Series, and that was a fight that he was winning and then ended up making a horrible mistake, in my opinion. He showed to have very bad fighter IQ in that fight where he ended up getting caught with the triangle choke against Herbert Burns. Everybody knew Herbert Burns' game is the jiu-jitsu. He's a nasty BJJ practitioner. Darrick Minor was up on points. All he had to do was slow it down, continuously use his striking, keep the fight on the feet, and instead he jumps into guard and gets triangle choked. But since then, bounced back with 2 victories, even pulled off a triangle choke for himself and his return after that loss against Herbert Burns. So he's a crafty dude. But this is Grant Dawson's fight all day. This is tailor-made for him. I think that he's just going to go in there and just bulldoze Darrick Minor. Maybe Darrick Minor stuffs some takedowns early, but once it hits the later rounds, the second and the third, Grant Dawson's going to just wear him out and continuously get takedowns. Grant Dawson, man, he's a cool dude. I like this guy, and I think the sky's the limit with this guy. Some interesting videos. If you follow him on Instagram, you'll see him doing rubber matches, grappling against Auntie Laura Sanko and his girlfriend at the same time, whipping those girls up. That was a pretty funny video I saw on Instagram. And obviously he's living the life, grappling with Auntie Sanko and his girlfriend at the same time. Who knows? Maybe they even did a little rubber match back at the house after. Who knows? Probably not. I think actually Auntie Sanko's married, but maybe I'm just wishing well for the guy. But yeah, Grant Dawson, he's going to come out there. He's going to win this fight. The line is high, so it may be a possible parlay leg, something like that. So Grant Dawson to win that fight. We got some ladies throwing down. One of 2 fights on the main card of some women throwing down. We got Megan Anderson taking on Norma Dumont, the Brazilian fighter who's undefeated. Only has 4 fights, though, so not the most seasoned of fighters. Megan Anderson, you guys know the deal with her. She has a crazy frame. I'll never forget when she was taking on Holly Holm, where I made a hell of a payday betting against her because a lot of people were just seeing her frame and they were skewing the line just based off her frame. They thought she was so big and her striking was nasty, but that really wasn't the case. I still feel that she has a lot of potential to be a solid fighter, but she definitely needs to work on her grappling still to this day. You saw what Felicia Spencer did to her too. Got the rear naked choke in the first round quite easily. So definitely has holes in her game, although she did look good in her last fight against Zarah, which she got the triangle choke against her. So she's definitely working on her grappling, and she does have power. She is the type of chick that if she does connect, she can hurt these women that get locked in the cage with her. I definitely do believe that. But, she does have to land first before she's going to hurt anybody. And then you got this girl, Norma Dumont, the Brazilian fighter, who is also, she's a decently sized girl, has a decent frame, has pretty good jiu-jitsu skills. She likes that rear naked choke. She's been finishing quite a few opponents with it. Half of her wins come by rear naked choke. And looking at her on tape, you can tell that she's more of a jiu-jitsu based fighter and training out of a Gordon fight team over there in Brazil. And I got to lean with Megan Anderson. I just think that, as I stated, as she grooms certain aspects of her game, she has a lot of potential. And I think it's her fight. She needs to keep this fight on the feet. She needs to stuff the takedown. And she needs to use her striking, just sit on the back foot and just pump the jab, work the 1-2, easily work her way in and pop the 1-2 and just rack up some points and give Norma a chance to bail in the fight. Maybe she doesn't like getting tagged and she looks for a way out and you get the finish, get a TKO or whatnot, maybe even a knockout. But yeah, I'll go with Megan Anderson to win the fight. I touched upon this fight a little bit earlier when I noted the most anticipated fights for the teller. I really am interested in this fight. Aalon Cutelaba is a guy that just brings it. I'm excited to watch his weigh-in, let alone his fight. He might come painted up in the Hulk outfit, or he might just scream in his opponent's face like he did in his last fight against Khalil Roundtree, where he may have... Actually, no, I'm going to take that back. I was going to say he may have punked him out at the weigh-in, but that wasn't the case. If you guys remember that, the way that fight played out, Roundtree just blew his load and Cutelaba just beast moded him. And Cutelaba is a savage. I think that he has a lot of work to do on certain aspects of his game on a skill level. But this guy is always going to have the tenacity and the attitude and the mentality that he's going to win the fight when he steps in there. That's always an X factor, and that's a great thing to have as a fighter. But now, let's talk about the skill sets. This guy, Magomed Ankalaev, this guy is a stud. This guy has excellent grappling to go along with excellent striking, and he should be undefeated right now. The only loss that he had in his entire professional career was a triangle choke against Paul Craig, where he was absolutely dominating the fight and got choked out with 1 second left in the fight, believe it or not. For those of you guys that remember that fight, it was crazy. But he shouldn't have lost that fight. And you know what? That was a learning experience for him. I'm sure that won't happen again. But the dude is a beast. I mean, you saw him in his last fight with the Anderson Silva, Lyoto Machida style front kick to Dolce, the African fighter, where he just put him out. And that was a fight that he was dominating, and he really didn't even need to continuously engage. But he still chose to engage and go for the knockout because he's a savage. So, I'm very, very high on Magomed Ankalaev. I think this is a guy that is a true contender to the light heavyweight championship belt. This is another guy. I've been talking about it a lot, that there's these guys in the light heavyweight division that are really moving up their ranks and completely changing the structure of the weight division. I said time and time again that the light heavyweight division has been one of the more shallow weight divisions. I said that. Not a lot of people like that. I said that John Jones has really never fought top talent. He fought all these older legends that, had names back in the day, but they're not in the same type of skill level. But then you look at guys like Magomed Ankalaev, Johnny Walker, Alexander Rakic, even Dominic Reyes, Volkan Ozdemir. I mean, these guys have skills, man. These guys are truly skilled fighters, and they're big. So throw Magomed Ankalaev's name right, along with those other guys I just spoke of, because this guy is a true contender. And if he pulls off a win against Ion Cutelaba, it's another solid win on his resume. But Cutelaba likes to spoil the party. We saw him do it against Khalil Roundtree, after Roundtree had a lot of momentum behind him with his Muay Thai really coming to fruition. And now we'll see what he could do against a guy Magomed Ankalaev. If I see Ion Cutelaba winning this fight, I think he catches him with a nasty hook or something coming in and knocks him out. If it ends up being like a barn burner type of fight, a dog fight, I could see Cutelaba maybe catching him. But other than that, I think that this is Ankalaev's fight to win. Cutelaba is a tough customer, but Magomed Ankalaev is a stud, and I'm definitely rolling with him to win the fight. So in the co-main event spot, which I believe this is the co-main event spot from everything I saw. I'm a little confused on that. Not sure why this fight is here. In my opinion, it should be on the preliminary cards. Maybe throw the Ankalaev fight here in the co-main event spot. Not sure exactly what their thoughts upon that were. But we got Felicia Spencer taking on Zarah Fairn. And, we'll start off with Felicia Spencer. She's coming off a tough loss to a legend in Chris Cyborg. And Felicia Spencer really showed that she's a tough customer. She ain't going to be put away in there. She survived against Chris Cyborg. She wasn't going anywhere, eating nasty shot after nasty shot. Never looked for a way out. We already know her grappling is very above average. She's very good at using her weight to control opponents and can really put them in some compromising positions. So she is a stud in that aspect. She was the champion over in Invicta before making her UFC debut. And, she's a nasty fighter. And I definitely see her winning this fight against Zarah. Zarah's coming off a nasty defeat against Megan Anderson, where she was triangle choked early in the first round. But Zarah does have good striking. She's an athletic chick. She's already 33 years old. So if she's going to make a run at anything, now's the time to do it. Cannot afford to take another loss here against Felicia. And I think she is going to take a loss here. So I'm not exactly sure what the UFC brass was planning on doing with this whole setup. I think maybe they're looking to groom Felicia again, to rise her up through the ranks and get her up to a top fight again, I guess. But not sure why it's a co-main event fight. All right, here we go. We made it to the main event spot. We got a legend in Joseph Benavidez taking on Deiveson Figueiredo. Two very, very solid flyweight fighters. And then this is for the belt. This is for the belt for those of you guys that don't realize. I guess Henry Cejudo has been stripped. He hasn't defended the belt in a long time, so the UFC is they're gonna crown someone else champion. And if either of these guys win, I think that they're deserving of that. Especially Joseph Benavidez. It would be excellent to see him win this fight because this is a guy that just was so close to being a champion. He had one little roadblock in his way, and that was Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. He was never able to defeat him and to wear that gold. But now he has a golden shot to do so. He definitely has a tough customer in front of him in Deiveson Figueiredo, who's a big fighter for the weight division. He's a well-rounded fighter. He's a nasty striker. He has good jiu-jitsu. This is a tough customer here. This is not a walk in the park for Joseph Benavidez in any way, shape, or form. So, yeah, I'm excited for this fight. Joseph Benavidez, this is a guy that I've been watching since the WEC days. I've been watching him battle some of the top bantamweight fighters in the world, like Dominic Cruz, a lot of the savages back. That was before they even had the flyweight division. So he was just a bantamweight fighter when really he was a flyweight fighter. But I remember watching him fight Miguel Torres. I bet you a lot of you guys don't even remember Miguel Torres. Comment below if you remember Miguel Torres when he was ranked a top 5 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, and he could not lose a fight. And he just looked like an absolute skeleton, but he was so crafty. And his mullet was waving in the wind, and he was using elbows and Muay Thai strikes, and then using his jiu-jitsu to whoop people's ass. Miguel Torres, man, shout out to him. A guy that really just disappeared towards the end of his career. Didn't really end in the best way for him, but an absolute legend nevertheless. But that's how I remember Joseph Benavidez, going to war with guys like that. And Joseph Benavidez, the only guys that ever defeated him, were guys like Demetrius Johnson, Dominic Cruz, and that was pretty much it. He did take a loss against Sergio Pettis. That was a split decision fight that really could have gone either way. And I think that you got to look at that fight and just understand that Joseph Benavidez is just doing this time and time and time again. It's only realistic that eventually maybe you're going to have a little shortcoming like that where you're just not all the way up for the fight. It's got to be so tough for him to do. He's constantly fighting these top-level opponents and just outclassing them, but just not holding the gold. He's married or dating Megan O'Leary, and he's just probably having a good time outside the octagon, and it's understandable. But when you talk about his skills, you just really have to understand how skilled this fighter is, man. Joseph Benavidez is a legend, carries power in his hands. His wrestling is great, training at Team Alpha Male, and I like him here. The line is close. He's 35 years old. This is his last chance at gold, in my opinion. If he does not win this fight, it's going to be tough for him to ever held the championship belt in his career. I really truly believe that. I think this is probably his last shot at 35 years old. I could foresee him retiring. I know he would love that matchup with Henry Cejudo eventually too, because he beat Henry the first time around. Don't forget that. Triple C or whatnot, whatever you want to call him, the triple champion. He lost to Joseph Benavidez. So Joseph Benavidez is a true stud. And now let's touch upon Deiveson Figueiredo. I told you guys about him already. This guy is a savage for the weight class. He's big, he's muscular, he's well-rounded. His only loss was against Jussier Formiga, where Formiga was really able to use his jiu-jitsu and whatnot. Formiga being the jiu-jitsu specialist. Maybe that shows, I don't want to say a hole in his game, but it shows a route where Joseph Benavidez can take this fight. Maybe Joseph Benavidez uses his wrestling, gets on top a little bit, avoids the submission, and it looks good on the judges' scorecards. Joseph Benavidez also, of course, has the ability to go out there and strike with anybody. But, Deiveson's going to have, that reach advantage, and he has good footwork. That might not be the route that you would like to see Benavidez go. I definitely want to see Benavidez mix it up. And, it's a hard fight to call, but I'm going to go with the legend in Benavidez. I mean, this guy handles business against everybody, as long as your name wasn't, Demetrius Johnson or Dominic Cruz, two Hall of Famers, Hall of Fame legend fighters. So, and then, of course, the Sergio Pettis fight, but whatever. But, Joseph Benavidez is ready for this fight. He's taking this fight seriously. He knows this is a way to put a true stamp on his career, to carry that gold and probably solidify him being a Hall of Fame fighter. So I think he's going to rise to the occasion. He's going to pull this victory off. So that's what I think about that. It's a close fight, though. Deiveson Figueiredo is a savage, and he could finish anybody. I could see Figueiredo getting a knockout or some type of nasty finish. It's a close fight, but I'm going to go with the legend in Benavidez. And, yeah, it's going to sum up the card. For those of you guys that have not subscribed to the channel, please do. It's always appreciated. Also, I want to throw this out there. If anyone has questions for the teller, comment below, and I'll answer them on the next video that I shoot for the next card. So any questions that you guys have, of course, I always tell you guys, subscribe to the channel, like the video, help me get my name out there, help me expand. For those of you guys that are looking to join the team, do not hesitate. Message me, whether it's on Instagram at MMA_fortuneteller_, or comment below for other contact information if you don't have an IG. And yeah, on that note, I'm going to sign out. The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.